Yo, coming in with some arts for today. Uh, yeah, we're going to do some sketch reference and then some design work, maybe. Taking on more creature design, more elemental design ideas for games and stories, and creating a bridge between the worlds of manga and storytelling and games and design. This is an idea I've had for a comic for quite a while about a woman who's brought back from the dead as a weapon to be used as a tool in this conflict, a post-apocalyptic kind of samurai style western, and can she transcend her nature as a tool to, create some force of change in this world, which is pretty cool. I came up with the idea for this story back in 2016. It was my favorite story I outlined from then. And then later, coming into Overwatch and coming up with a bunch of ideas for Overwatch type designs and characters. And Mercy is my favorite character to play because of the collaborative nature of the game and the unique gameplay elements that provides, being able to be a support in someone else's game, to give them new opportunities, and the collaborative nature. And I don't know if you played Overwatch recently, but the mythic Overwatch skin is Vengeance Mercy, and even has the colors and the color coordination of my Vengeance series. It's super cool. Yeah, wild synchronicity there. I don't know if Overwatch read any of the messages I sent them and saw my stuff, or if it's just a wild coincidence. Either way is equally cool, I would say. Either side is equally cool. We're going to do some reference from Ahmed Aldori, Peter Han, Feng Zhu, and maybe Kim Jung-gi. I have all of their work pulled up. And then after a bit of reference, to do some original design work. Sounds like a good plan. We'll pull in just a little bit, but I'll try to navigate and pay attention to the camera as we're going, and to move back to make sure that we're always drawing in frame. Yeah? So some figure reference, and we're trying to capture gestural work. How he does these figures with I can capture the figures, but I always end up expending 3 to 4 times more lines, maybe. Sometimes when we're on, we can get a good capture, but everyone is like that, everyone becomes a master of their own style, and focusing in on those things and your unique, kind of your language of design, like your handwriting, it becomes something that's so incredibly unique to you. My mind is still blown that you can read someone's handwriting like a fingerprint, That blows me away. Try to do some good, just drawing in shapes in our figures, our drawings today, to have a gestural quality that we use to find designs as much as we create them, to have a little bit of randomness in the design process. Yeah, I completely missed the pose on this one. It's like that. It's the back leg up and over, arm, up, down. And we'll go in and do more structural stuff as well. Today we're starting gestural and then moving structural. These collection of figures is just one of my favorites. We'll also move into some design stuff though, but we want to start with that loose gestural quality that these have, so that even when we're referencing more sophisticated drawings and designs, we try and capture them in an abstract way. And then when you're coming up with your own designs, if you're using a reference that's only for pose, or a reference of a creature, but you want to change the reference, then not capturing it with clinical accuracy becomes a good thing. Becomes something that's quite nice. I want to keep a fun, playful energy today as we are finding designs and finding movement and story. We'll go back in and continue doing Vagabond, either today or tomorrow, but it was really fun drawing some Vagabond. I'd also like to go back in and continue drawing Naruto and Witch Hat and take on some other series. I know while there isn't a free site where you can read Dogs, Bullets, and Carnage, at least since the last time I checked it, which is probably a couple weeks ago, there's not a place to draw Dogs, Bullets, and Carnage from, but on the Viz site, you can read the first 3 chapters of almost any manga, which is really, really cool. So we are still able to read the first few chapters of Dogs. Yeah? That's fantastic. Okay. Try and see how quickly we can capture main bullet points and the movement of a figure. And then from there to be able to build our own things and to do some things with structure as well. To try and hone in on that gestural and structural architecture we've been working on. Yeah, liking these shapes. You can tell I've been doing at least a little bit of mechanical design, or even when we're drawing completely, organic forms. They look like you could turn them into cyborgs pretty easily from there, and kind of just like blocking in of main areas as they move into space. You'd be like, okay, that's a series of shapes, and then you start making them more structural and you have like a cyborg armor. Okay, let's jump around a little bit. I like to have an element of randomness in any just like workflow and structure. I like to have some of the unplanned in there to get an element of the unexpected. Get some aliens and a starship captain. Really good. His foot's like behind him. So to have like a sense of movement and even storytelling in static designs is a really cool thing. This dude is awesome at that. Obviously, like Kim Jong-gi has the wildest sense of stories happening in the arts, and you can tell that he finds the story as he's drawing them more than being like pre-planned things. I think all of the time, unless, it's like a commission or something, but in his personal sketchbooks. We'll pretty much just leave these as is instead of like trying to build things on top of their shapes. We could try and change them and build a few things, I suppose, but always just to be honest about your references. And right now we're trying to create a good movement and flow, a good motion in our work. Okay, cool. We've got a pretty wide angle here. We won't care too much about these guys' relation to one another in the original drawing. But when you're drawing characters, to have a lens that's like, you're kind of glancing up at the head and down at the feet. I don't know what type of lens it is, or distance from the, subject that creates that effect. It's usually like the further you are away, the less perspective there is. Let's take a close up. I think it's like eye level, halfway point. Always different types of body types. These drawings, very, very lovely. Yeah, no, the distance there isn't quite right, but we're not trying to create accurate things so much as a good sense of movement and flow. And then we might go in. I collected such a sick collection of wild sculptures, like a whole bunch of sculptures, different types of pottery, some of it contemporary, some of it ancient and cultural, different types of pottery, and some of them like paintings and designs, but of all these creatures and textures. And I always I've thought that for a long time, like when walking through an art museum and you seeing like contemporary sculptures, and just in the back of your mind is always comics and RPG games, you think of like, oh man, whoa, these are wild textures. And if you watch Feng Zhu's like reskin, you're like, whoa, either for the base shapes of things or for the textures of things. On either side of the reskin, a lot of these things would be fucking wild. Where you have like a giraffe or something, and then you reskin it with some of these pottery and angles, and some of the way they'll like be capturing a form or something. These pieces of pottery, like capturing a form, but then it gets wildly abstract, like a feminine form, but then part of it breaks into abstraction, or like it changes it and morphs it in such a dynamic way. Really, really cool. Let's see. Kind of Feng Zhu. I guess we still have the same Feng Zhu video up, but we'll use different references for things. Have some like ships. Yeah. Be doing some ships. Try to just use his like shapes for ships, and then create unique things. Because we want to like set up you know, a good flow for coming up with some original designs. And maybe also characters. Yeah, designs and characters, and we'll get into some of that pottery stuff maybe pretty quick. So it's such a good art haul, such a good collection of images. I love finding art where it's like you've found art that you've never seen or considered or conceptualized even at all. And you're finding like a whole bunch of it. It's a good feeling. Change up the angle on your things. Yeah. And some of these. It was certainly like some of these cultural arts, like Chinese and South American. Chinese and South American, like pottery, carving on temples, little statues and statuettes, some of them mythical figures, some of them for good luck or protection. All kinds of different stories, and you don't know all of the stories, obviously. Really, really cool. I'm thinking of like Persona, right? And Persona has such a cool collection of creatures and characters and such. You know, and it's got a monster collection element to it, where they are enemies, but then you collect them and they become part of your team. And I'm like, whoa, there's such a cool, like, you know, amount of unseen designs. I'm like, all these cultural stuff is always cool. Oftentimes they define, whether in like dance outfits or change it a little bit more. This one's more of a side angle. Make sure we're drawing on camera. Yeah. A little less top down. Yeah, different cultures have ways of cartooning, ways of simplifying and changing the anatomy and the structure, the shape of things that you would just never even consider, maybe. You can tell as we're looking at some of this Feng Zhu and just glancing at it, just glancing at the Feng Zhu for a minute to get some sense of form, and then getting back into our design process. We're thinking of the abstract pottery. You can tell that these alien ships are starting to look like, you know, cultural artifacts right away. And then if you like know the back legs or haunches of a creature, you can always throw those on, and then the front legs to like make anything into a creature. Yeah, it's some kind of a thing now. Learning those most important shapes and iconography behind different creatures and builds is something really cool. Added into your arsenal. It's kind of a mecha sci-fi thing and also kind of a pottery creature. Um, let's see, some dragons. Be cool to do some in-depth studies as well. So we'll kind of switch over to Peter Hahn pretty quickly. Yeah, the way Peter Hahn draws and the way he creates a map is different than the way that I do, for sure. Referencing his stuff back in the day, it was hard for me to get it. And it took some time before going back in with more tools and more experience that I was able to bridge the gap between his style and my own. And get the most from his brilliance of design and in creating all of these different things. I love the way he takes nature and makes it like polygon shapes and like a structure. Oh shit, this thing's looking cool. Just in looking at those designs and like the kind of swirling shapes, because oftentimes these statues and statuettes and whatnot will have like the patterning of the culture thrown into the carving. So it's like the shape of the creature, but then with patterning that kind of coats it. And you see examples of that in like Final Fantasy. You think of like Bahamut and all of these different summons and creatures. Badass set of wings would look pretty cool on that. But maybe we'll keep it more of a horse. And just move forward, yeah. So some cool things. I love Yifeng. His voice is such a pleasant companion in the art space. Guess we'll do just a little bit of roots for just a minute, just in creating organic forms and shapes. Making them more rounded as it moves, and creating bumps and ridges, and seeing those shapes kind of flow and change. Sometimes the bumps will like even out. Sometimes they might be bold enough to want to throw some more line work around them to define them the way like muscles. The way that, you define muscles with lines sometimes around a bicep or different points, like a shoulder blade. So you're thinking of the way forms change, and they can change in direction entirely. And have this one go in while this one comes down. It's curved around and then comes back out over here and gets wider. And flatter. And even, I'm not drawing with like smooth lines, obviously. We're gonna try and draw kind of lightly today. My wrist was like, hurting earlier, partly because of art and partly because of Mad Pinterest collection, certainly. So while that one bends backwards, this one can bend forwards. You have it like coming way forwards, a whole bunch of them. It curves and then moves like that. Thing has drawn these root shapes, and then we're doing original designs with just like the basis on his starting work, which is, sometimes it's easy to start with an artist already defining and breaking down the abstraction of a photograph which has no lines on it into a drawing where they're using their, arts, their creative intelligence to make the infinite detail of the photograph more simplified and creating forms out of it. Cool. So rocks, and capturing some of these like roots are coming out of a rocky surface and a cliff. Lovely, lovely. Really good. Just a bit of that. Going to back to some Ahmed Altori and do some more of these figures. I wish you could draw forever. There's definitely an amount of creative stamina that you get during a day. And there's lots of things you can do to help you, get more stamina. Or even if you're feeling burnt out, if you keep on, sometimes you get a second wind and you can, really keep going. I don't even know how Oda, the mangaka that does One Piece, does it. I heard and read he is supposed to sleep 2 to 3 hours a night and work some kind of like 18-hour days every single day. And then you look at the line work. You look at the line work of One Piece and you're like, what? How could you go with that amount of work in a day, that amount of sleep at night, and draw perfect line work endlessly? Like, what? I know, I read the Haruki Murakami, what I read about when I read about running, or what I think about when I write about running. And he describes having an ultra marathon experience, and he's in the ultra marathon and he wasn't prepared for it. Everyone else did the preparations for the ultra marathon and he's like dying, and he's like 1/3 of the way through, and he's really like, he doesn't know if he's gonna be able to make it, but he'll push on just a little more. And at about like the halfway point or something, he reaches a transcendent state where now all of a sudden he's running effortlessly. He's running like the lights around him are like glowing brightly. There's like, a mystical quality to the world around him. And it's like he punched through a barrier. There's like a point, or like, Goggins, Walter Goggins, the stay hard. Walter Goggins is like, he details running an ultra marathon, and like he was dying through it, but found wells of stamina that he did not know that he had. I mean, granted, that took such a serious toll on his body. Afterwards, he was like, had to go into physical therapy to recover and shit. But we do have more strength and more resilience, more stamina, and like, drive you can tap into somehow. And if it becomes your routine, for so many years, who knows what kind of superpowers you could unlock. Seems like a lot, though. I'm like, oh my God, Oda, you've given so much. Like, you should sleep. And he's like, if I start to sleep, I will never get it back. I'm like, take on more assistance? I don't know, man. Maybe, he's got to do it. He's got to do it. It's part of his quest now. He's got to run the gauntlet and bring One Piece, all the way to, like, victory lap. I just, don't ever want to see any artist hurt themselves for their craft, like, that's, I don't think that's something that we need. Like, I, even if then you made something really, really good, then people are going to be like, oh man, it was worth it for this art. And I don't know if it ever really is. Like, you can make projects more collaborative. The master artist can step down and share their tools and techniques with more beginning artists to share the load and bring more different types of creativity on board. You can step into a more arts direction role because there's so many, amazing fans and starting designers that would love the opportunity to collaborate and work and take part in this, like creative mastery. I don't know if anyone should hurt themselves for art ever, right? Like, we don't need it. Yeah, so we'll try and keep a nice chill rhythm today as we're breaking into it, moving forward, creating shapes. We should go into some shape creation stuff. Good sense of 3 points on everything. Good sense of line. I guess I haven't done any line work exercises. Just doing some straight lines. Whole sequences of straight lines don't look super nice on a page, but when you're referencing, it's nice to be able to, set down like the quality stuff, so that whatever you're making is what would be most helpful to you at any given point in time. Let's try to capture this. Yeah, I hate to see that when you're looking at animators. Like animators that are forced to work so hard into overdrive that it starts to become something painful. Sometimes they end up in the hospital. And even if the animation's really, really good, if I learn that, I'm like, oh shit, I wish they would have had more help. And that, if the project has a higher budget, you're like, well, there's only so much that the animators can do. But if you made really good animation resources, yeah, so that animators could level up their skills to the level of the project as streamlined as possible, and then you use the budget so that you could delegate work better and make it more, just something that's no one's breaking their neck over. That's always a good thing. Oh man, I hate not being able to listen to a song that's in my head. Oh man, I've got the Tower of God opening 2 theme in my head. Tower of God was a series where I was like, it would be fun to do a little redesign of Tower of God characters. Their world and how he builds it is while we're watching Tower of God, my father and little brother and I, there was so many times where you're so completely unclear on what is going on in the world. We looked up a Reddit post that explains what's happening in the lore and mythology of Tower of God, and it was so unexplained. Nothing about the series was explained, and you think he didn't even know. Slave in Utero, weirdest artist's nickname, had no idea what he was writing when he started, and was just creating a dynamic story with a series of moments and characters, and then you build on it, which is not uncommon in the world of manga and design. But I don't know if I've ever seen an example more just blatantly no one knew what was going on in that world, and in time we get to learn more and more about it. But they really do capture a lot of interesting moments and characters, dynamics, and It's fun and new, yet classic. Creating rotational spaces with, you can try different types of perspective. If you make like a wheel, you can try and do it really nice. You can go in, or you can have something that's like way bigger on the front with like intense foreshortening, and way smaller on the side, and even like gets way bigger in the middle, and then smaller, and then way smaller by the end. So using like a dynamic perspective and a rotation of forms within a kind of grid and block setup. Pretty cool. Really nice characters. Just kind of using basic placeholders. Another really, really good artist to reference is Krenz Kushart. I think he's Thai. I don't want to give misinformation. It's been a long time since I've checked. And he does, you can look at some of his arts tutorials, but they are all in a different language. So you might not get that far. But if you're a trained artist, you could always skip around and check out what is he doing? What is he giving examples of? But his anatomical breakdowns, some of them you can see he's using reference and then changing the reference up and making it stylized and dynamic quite a good bit. Some of his stuff is like no reference, but obviously he did a whole bunch of reference beforehand, creating those shapes and really complex mannequins. The way that you see that he's using his anatomy and like giving little lines and indications of the way these different forms fit together. Sometimes he will like simplify the forms quite a lot, but still give all these notches and hooks and like points that, so that you notice as you're doing reference when one thing changes angle and turns into something else, and just has a really nice, really, really nice and smooth collection of poses and techniques to create like the base image and make it dynamic and bold for paintings. Because you look at his painting stuff, and his painting technique is far out. It's really, really good. Okay, should open up Pinterest and go into some of our images that we collected and work from there. Oof. Okay, there's like a wild dog thing, and the move here, I think the move is to draw some of these statues and collect their proportion and images, and then draw actual animals. Draw some actual animals that, things like shoulders kind of goes into its head, swoop around of its back and back legs. There's like a hollow space in the stomach of it. Its face looks horrified. It's like, wild monster mouth kind of thing. Like eyes. And the head flattens out and goes back, like the actual cat shape of head. It's a cat, not a dog. Yeah. And just really, really long front legs, like connect down and in around the shoulders there. The shoulders kind of come out. Like it's definitely detached from traditional anatomy, but as a caricature, it captures some of the, real life qualities, and then bends and moves some of them into something else. It's got a bunch of spikes up and on its back. Okay. It doesn't have any swirling patterns or anything, but you can add them in so quickly. You'd want to be careful not to use swirling patterns on everything. Yeah, but to try and capture different types of patterns, I feel like you can do a square spiral thing, and all of the patterning on here is like in blocky right angles, you know? And you can capture it abstract like, and then, you know, go in if you're a digital painter and learn the patterning and give more in-depth examples. You could even use some kind of technology to recreate different types of patterns and then bend and shift and augment those patterns into your own thing, and then just apply them onto your image so that you could, like, you know, really map it out and make the pattern perfect. Put it on. And this looks more like a bear. Yeah, the differences between cats and dogs and bears are fun to map. Cat. It still looks like a bear. Oh man. This is not slim enough? Who knows? So then, you know, you have a, like, type of creature build, and you can go in and practice different things on top of it. And, like, change around the head to, like, you know, lizard dog or something. Like big hands or anything. You can just switch it up. Kind of helmet thing. A helmet that uses some kind of aspect of patterning. Oh man. See a lot of these wild scale designs. It's like scales that are making a kind of a spiral. Like that would be wild stuff. You're not seeing it here, but I can still imagine it as I'm, you know, blocking this in. And you want other people to be able to imagine it too, you know, but you can see what might be kind of cool. You have a warrior coming in. Some areas are patterned and some are not. That's cool. All right. There's something here that is like a rabbit, but looks like a killa. You know, it looks like a carnivorous rabbit. Death rabbit. It's like fangs. Maybe it's not supposed to be a rabbit, but nothing else has, you know, ears that big. And then, yeah, as you like practice these things, it'll obviously look like your reference, but as you learn some of the forms and break them down into various degrees of abstraction, is like you can then change them and take them in all kinds of different directions. It's got a wild, like, its arms are like up and back. It's like hopping. doing like a jump, maybe? I don't know. Ooh, it's like pine cone things. Just wild creatures and designs. Maybe go in and do some Final Fantasy creatures for like various types of... Ooh, this little guy's cool. His leg up and over, his head to the side. He's got a little mask face with tiny arms. Yeah. And just this big rounded body. And then, oh man. I don't know if anyone's seen Neil Gaiman's Mirror Mask. Dave McKean, comic book artist. Crazy cool art style. And the way that he does faces and masks. He does noses like that all the time. I remember seeing Mirror Mask, and the main character of Mirror Mask is a girl. She's an artist, with a wild adventure for a life, and she longs for a normal life. But the way that she draws and the things that she came up with, I was so envious as a youth. I was like, I wish I would have came up with those things. You know, I wish that my sketchbook looked anything like that. I knew no foundational design at that point and just had a bunch of anime caricatures, just taking someone else's design and kind of turning it just a little bit, you know? And it reminded me of how I drew when I was a kid, when it was just like, would make up whole wild types of shapes and things that have never even existed before. Took a long time to be able to touch back into that. But even still, I can't say like I'm on top of that. Sometimes you can touch into it where you're like making new things. You imagine yourself like those sculptors who are just like coming up with interesting shapes for you know, effigies and statuettes and ceremonial masks, and like, you know, there was no reference. It was the natural world, but such a creative design in exploring that natural world. Oh, look at this. Now we're doing like little shapes. Like, look at that, like cylindrical kind of a shape. Using that guy, and that guy's reference is like a lion thing, but lions' heads aren't anything like that. It's kind of like a horse lion with like swirling furs, and its body goes like back and way up, kind of like a greyhound. Just like greyhound horse lion thing. And then you could give it horns if you wanted. It's like a goat lion horse thing. You know, this is the kind of stuff where, you know, it gets really fun. It gets fun to break into these and see what you can create. And after having, invested yourself in form and abstractions and different techniques, you're thinking of form and in space with an idea for the kind of things that you want to create. Let's get a little pot shape. And start stretching and skewing your references as soon as you find yourself comfortable with them. Like, here's a guy with a little rounded body, and it just comes up, the rounded body becomes the neck of this little circular head thing with like a point on top. But it's not this shape, and it's not this angle. Maybe it's a little Mechatron guy, little Legend of Zelda Ico type temple where magic sustains these pottery creatures. It's got a little staff thing because it can do magic. Well, it's got some other creatures with it. His eyes are almost on the side of his head, which I'm changing from the reference. You know, you're just taking one shape from one place and design aspects from another, and then making stuff up on top of that. Eh. Arm gets real skinny, but then it's got like shoulders. Probably can't move too much. Just kind of walks back and forth and does spells. They'd have a funny death animation when you beat it where it like spins around and dies. Yeah, use ideas from everywhere. I do like the way the shape of its head kind of comes into a beak thing. Ah, there's just so much stuff. There's so much stuff. Okay, we'll try and wild style a few more designs from these. And just to, yeah, glance at these things and then be making like quick kind of studies. Different angles on these for sure. That's like the third foot below and behind these things. And making them like a little bit abstract, like modern art and sculpture and such. Doing form studies on those things would be really nice. Just like mapping abstract arts, because oftentimes they bend and curve at, real weird angles, but there's some kind of symmetry of design, some kind of logic behind the angles or emotion that comes from these collection of shapes, and you don't always know what it is, an abstraction, but like something's there. And doing stuff like this where you're just like learning forms and fitting forms together, I guess I'm kind of doing now what I was talking about. Could be a piece of a design, a body, a neck, an arm, an appendage. You could keep going. Always like The Legend of Zelda too, but it feels good to, if you look at different cultural artifacts and things, you can kind of make Legend of Zelda things that don't look like The Legend of Zelda, but somewhere else, something else. You didn't touch any Kim Jong-gi. We'll go into Peter Han for just a minute. And like the tiger, it's very long, more flat on top. Arms come out and down. Tiger. Chest and the muscles of the chest. Its neck is not that long. It's like that. And its other leg is forward. Its chest goes like that, and then the belly and the stomach is much longer. This curves up, gets more narrow there. More boxy haunches. Reaching behind it, yeah, this leg's not correct. Yeah, like that. Tiger head, pointing down, out nose, blocky nose, and it gets wider towards the square on the side. Tiger. Very, very roughly. Then if you were to abstract it, add some pottery shapes to it, you know, you can like start to see lots of places you could go with it, you know. Into making it into this new thing. Adding like different changes in dimension and angle. Widening the neck or whatever, you know, to stretch and skew and to make this a fun place. How to fill a sketchbook like Peter Hunt is the video. Let's see, the monkey. I love the breakdowns of like the face of the monkey. His chin area, like coming in and up. And these areas are all skin, and the rest of the monkey is fur. They got that mask face. Interesting. Why do they look exactly like this? You know, some aspects of animals are like, oh, okay, clearly that is camouflage, that's communication, that's defense. But other parts of ways of how they look, I'm like unsure. Maybe it's all that, but there seems like a lot of wild specificity of design in the natural world. Like, why that thing specifically? Who could say? Then, yeah, you could add in paneling or layering, kind of scaling of different pieces of design. And if you learned the shapes of each really well, so instead of having fur, it's got these scales with like swirls happening in them. Designing for games is so cool. You can't forget they're either designing for like manga or games. If you're drawing one of these, like you'd have to way dial back what you could do with the scaling and the complexity of this thing. You could just draw a couple of them and really map out their shapes of like each scale looks exactly like this thing, you know? And it's flat on the top, right? And they all fit together in a layered pattern, you know? And then like just like map it. And yeah, working in collaborative arts, totally cool. Totally cool. All right, this is a good amount of warm-up and exercises here. We'll come back in and continue thinking about making creatures. Yeah, creatures and shapes for things. Try to get some basic shapes like, I don't know, elves and goblins and ogres and things like that. And then to change up the reference and the culture to look for different, diverse places for things that you can combine together and use not only your imagination, but your artist craftsmanship to put these things together until they become something unique, something cool, something that speaks to you. And I like, just the creative process of like, if you're thinking of an adventure and someone goes into a temple, there's a number of trials there, and you're imagining that they look mythic and otherworldly and strange. You can have a vision for how that feels for you. Then getting into the design space, you go and you find and discover what creates that feeling for you, where you've, part of it is pre-planning, part of it is discovery. And that's where I find I come up with the best designs myself. Like this guy. All right, we'll leave it there because I don't think I have much more storage, and it helps if I've got a little extra storage so I can upload it. All right, happy art space, happy drawing. I hope you have a good time. coming up with designs, learning new techniques and skills, and to make the space something that is like life-giving for you, something that gives you energy that you can take back into your day as you spend your focus and energy to learn these things, to invest yourself in these skills. Always give yourself credit for the progress that you've made and every step forwards as you're looking at how goddamn awesome everyone is in this art game and design game and story game. Think also of, you know, what your dreams are and how far you've come, and, you know, just give yourself that credit and a pat on the back every step of the way, and make sure to take care of yourself. Yeah, your people need you. There's no alternative for you, for them. All right. Peace and love.